The first whisper came on the coldest night of the year. I was reading in bed when I heard it. A wet, papery sound, rising through the gaps in the 100-year-old floorboards, not the usual creaks and groans of an old house settling, but something distinctly vocal. "You're standing on my face." I froze, my book slipping from numb fingers. The voice wasn't just beneath me. It was coming from inside the floor, vibrating up through the worn pine planks like a struck tuning fork. When I pressed my ear to the wood, I felt warm breath against my cheek. The house had been a bargain, a stately 1890s Victorian with original details and suspiciously fresh flooring throughout. The seller's disclosure mentioned nothing more sinister than a leaky roof. I should have asked why the previous owners only stayed 11 days. By the third night, patterns emerged. The voice only spoke when the temperature dropped below 20 degrees. It grew clearer the longer I listened. It remembered things I'd never told anyone. "You still miss your childhood dog?" It sighed on Tuesday. "The one your father hit with the Buick." I'd never mentioned that to anyone in this town. I tried recording it. My phone captured only static, but the waveform analysis showed something impossible. The spectral pattern matched human vocal cords, yet the frequency range extended far below anything a human throat could produce. When I played it back at midnight, every glass in the kitchen shattered. The voice laughed. The Historical Society had no records of 341 Elm Street before 1893. The archivist's hands shook as she pulled a crumbling ledger from the restricted section. "The original house burned in the winter of 1892, she whispered. "They built yours right on top of the... Her eyes dropped to my shoes. "The ashes." I pried up a floorboard with a crowbar. The space beneath shouldn't have existed, a yawning black cavity far deeper than the foundation should allow. A stench of charred wood and spoiled meat wafted up, so thick I could taste it. My flashlight beam disappeared into the darkness without illuminating anything. Then something blinked back at me. The temperature plummeted after that. Frost flowers bloomed across my bedroom windows, despite the furnace running nonstop. The floorboards developed a pulse, subtle at first, just a faint throb beneath my feet, every 37 seconds exactly. By solstice night, the whole house breathed. I watched in horror as the gaps between planks widened and narrowed in perfect rhythm, exhaling gusts of air that smelled like a long-dead fireplace. The voice stopped speaking. Instead, it began singing, a lullaby my grandmother used to hum, one I'd never recorded or written down. The melody vibrated up through my bones, making my teeth ache. That's when the scratching started, not from below, from inside the walls. On Christmas Eve, the power went out. I huddled by the fireplace, watching my breath fog in the Arctic air. The singing had grown to a chorus of voices, some whispering, some weeping, all perfectly synchronized. Then the floorboards rippled, not metaphorically, The actual wood warped and bulged like something was pressing up from below. Nails popped free with pistol-shot cracks. From the widening gaps, dozens of blackened fingers emerged, their skin cracked like old porcelain, their nails torn down to bloody quicks. The lead voice sighed. "You left us waiting so long." The police found the front door wide open, my coffee still steaming on the kitchen counter. They noted the bizarre damage, not water warping, but precise spiraling fractures radiating from a central point in the living room, as if something had twisted its way up through the floor. The new owners installed wall-to-wall carpet. Their toddler keeps asking about the cold people who whisper through the heating vents. And every night at exactly 2:37 a.m., their baby monitor picks up something that sounds like someone humming. The first rule of living on Blackwater Point was simple: never answer the door when the wind howls. Old man Harker told me that when I bought the lighthouse keeper's cottage. He spat into the dunes and handed me the rusted key, his milky eyes tracking the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "The wife don't like newcomers," he muttered. I laughed. The previous keeper had died alone, but that was before I heard the knocking. It started in October, when the nor'easters came screaming in off the Atlantic. 3 sharp raps would shake the door at the height of each gale, always at 3:03 a.m. when the barometer plummeted. The first time, I flung the door open with a flashlight in hand. Nothing but sideways rain and the distant groan of the lighthouse horn. Then I looked down. Wet footprints led up the porch steps, not away, and they smelled like brine and funeral lilies. The village archives told the real story. In 1892, keeper Elias Voss married a woman who wasn't quite right. Mara Voss could predict storms days in advance, her headaches worsening as the pressure dropped. Villagers swore she'd stand naked in the gales, arms outstretched, as lightning crowned her like a bride's veil. Then the night Elias boarded up the lighthouse during a hurricane, 20 ships wrecked, 37 bodies washed ashore, and Mara walked into the surf, never to be seen again, at least not whole. The knocking grew louder. I'd wake to find the kitchen faucet running salt water, the bath filled with kelp, my sheets damp with tide pools that shouldn't exist. The local priest refused to come, crossing himself when I described the handprint on my bedroom window. Webbed fingers, too long, tipped with blackened nails. "She's not haunting you," he whispered. "She's courting." The worst night came during the spring equinox. The storm hit like artillery, waves chewing the cliffs below the cottage. At precisely 3:03 a.m., the knocking came, not at the door, but inside the walls, moving clockwise around the house. Thump. The bedroom. Thump. The pantry. Thump. The mirror above the hearth. When I looked, my reflection wasn't alone. A woman stood behind me, her hair swirling like ink in water, her mouth moving soundlessly. The glass fogged with her breath, forming 3 words: "Let me in." I smashed the mirror. The shards bled. Next morning, fishermen found the lighthouse lit despite dead bulbs. Inside, the walls wept seawater. The logbook lay open to Elias's final entry, the ink miraculously fresh. I was wrong to cage her. The sea wants what it loves. Beneath it, new writing swirled into existence as I watched. Mara's looping script. He's coming home with me tonight. I'm writing this by emergency flare light. The storm has cut the power. The waves are eating the cliffs, and the knocking has changed. No longer polite raps, but blows, as if something is trying to punch through the foundation. The barometer reads 28.94. The door is buckling, and through the keyhole I can see her wedding dress, not wet, but made of water, shifting with the tide. Mara keeps her promises. Her husband is coming home. The first time lightning hit the old Hadley house, it burned to the ground in 1983. The second time, it came back. I was 12 when I saw it reappear, a perfect Victorian skeleton, glowing bone white under a full moon, timbers groaning as they knitted themselves back together. One heartbeat, it was an empty lot, choked with weeds. The next, there it stood, smelling of charred wood and wet earth. My big brother Jake dared me to touch it. The second my fingers brushed the porch rail, every hair on my body stood up. Inside the shattered bay window, a shadow moved. Then the screaming started. They found Jake's bike at the edge of the property. 3 days later, its frame twisted like taffy. The search parties combed the woods, the creeks, even the foundations of the vanished house. No body, no blood, just a single streak of blackened grass where lightning had struck the exact center of the non-existent roof. Mom sold our farm within the month. 20 years later, the storm brought me back. I'd made a career out of chasing extreme weather, tornadoes in Oklahoma, hurricanes in the Gulf. But when the National Weather Service reported an anomalous lightning cluster over Blackwater Township, I knew. The Hadley house was hungry again. I found it just past midnight, materializing between thunderclaps. One strike revealed the scorched east gable. The next illuminated the full structure, its newel posts crowned with ball lightning that pulsed like a heartbeat. This time, I brought cameras. This time, I'd prove it. The front door swung open before I knocked. Inside, the house was wrong. The parlor walls bled wallpaper, not peeling, but dripping, strands of floral patterns swaying like seaweed. The grandfather clock chimed 13 times, its pendulum a rusted railroad spike. And the smell, not decay, not mildew, ozone, the thick charged air before a strike. A shadow flickered up the staircase. Jake's voice echoed from the second floor. "You're late." The cameras captured everything. The way the hallway stretched 3 feet longer between steps. The framed portraits whose eyes tracked me, their faces melting into my brother's features. The nursery where a crib rocked itself, its sheets crackling with static. When I played the footage back, the time code stuttered. Then, at the exact moment lightning struck the roof again, 88, 88, 88, I found Jake in the attic, or what was left of him. His body floated 6 inches above the floorboards, every inch of skin covered in luminous Lichtenberg figures, those fractal scars lightning leaves on flesh. His smile split his face like a live wire. "They don't let you leave," he whispered. Behind him, the storm raged in the attic's single round window. Backwards, rain rising, lightning crawling upward into the clouds. The house spit me out at dawn. I woke face down in the vacant lot, my equipment fried, my left arm numb from shoulder to fingertip. The doctors called it a secondary lightning strike, a side flash through grounded objects. They couldn't explain why my x-rays showed bones branched like lightning bolts, or why the storm chaser who interviewed me last week now lies catatonic, murmuring about dripping wallpaper. But I know the truth. The Hadley house isn't haunted, it's hunting, and lightning always strikes twice. The emergency alert system wasn't supposed to activate for another 37 minutes. I leaned back in my chair at the WX7 weather station, nursing stale coffee as the storm raged outside. The transmitter hummed softly, broadcasting static-laced updates to the handful of listeners still clinging to AM radio. Another tornado warning, another flood advisory, just another Tuesday night in the valley. Then, the console lit up like a Christmas tree. Weather alert, seek shelter immediately. The typo was the first red flag. The National Weather Service doesn't misspell immediately. I reached for the kill switch, and the broadcast played anyway. A child's voice crackled through the speakers. "Can you hear them yet?" The storm had been circling Blackwater Valley for 3 days, dumping enough rain to drown the back roads and knock out cell towers. WX7 was the only station still transmitting, which meant I was the only one who heard the first real warning. Not about the weather, about what was coming with it. The child's voice returned every 7 minutes, always the same question. "Can you hear them yet?" I checked the equipment, scoured the logs. Nothing. The signal was coming from inside our system, buried in the emergency alert frequency like a splinter in flesh. At 2:17 a.m., the voice changed. "They're in the wires now." And the lights went out. Backup power kicked on, bathing the control room in sickly yellow light. The radar screen fizzed with static, then resolved into an impossible image, a perfect circle of calm. No rain, no wind, just a mile-wide hole in the storm, drifting slowly toward town. The radio crackled. "They're hungry tonight." This time the voice was mine. I called the sheriff. No answer. Tried the NWS hotline. Dead air. The only sound was the radio, now stuck in a loop. "Can you hear them yet? They're in the wires. They're hungry tonight." Over and over, voices shifting. Sometimes a child, sometimes an old man, sometimes me. Always that same terrible question. Then the radar blipped. The eye of the storm was directly over Blackwater, and it was descending. I grabbed the mic for one last broadcast. This is WX7. If anyone can hear me, get to high ground. Something is... The transmitter exploded in a shower of sparks. Glass shattered as the station windows blew inward, not from wind but from pressure change. The air itself felt thick, heavy, like diving too deep underwater. That's when I heard it. The sound. Not through the radio. Not from outside. From inside my head. A wet, clicking chorus, like 1,000 tongues testing rotten teeth. We hear you now. The last thing I remember is running, bursting through the fire exit into horizontal rain. The town's lights were all out, but something moved in the dark. Shapes too tall for the streets, limbs bending wrong. They came from the hole in the sky, from the hollow eye of the storm. I made it 3 blocks before the pain hit. My fillings vibrated. My molars ached. The taste of copper flooded my mouth as my back teeth cracked apart. That's how they travel. Through the wires, through the bones. They found me at dawn, curled in a drainage ditch. The storm had passed. The sun shone. The radio in the sheriff's cruiser played static as he loaded me into the ambulance. Lucky to be alive, the medic said. But when the engine started, the static cleared for just a second, long enough to hear a familiar voice. Can you hear them yet? I spat out a molar onto the gurney. The roots were black, moving. The wind in Hollow Creek didn't howl. It whispered names. I first noticed it when I moved into the old ranger station at the edge of the nature preserve. The weather vane would spin wildly during storms, though no wind touched the trees. Then came the voices, not in the roar of gale force winds, but in those eerie moments between gusts when the air went still and heavy with anticipation. Miko, my name, drawn out like a beckoning finger, though I lived alone for 20 miles in every direction. The previous ranger left behind a journal. Most entries were mundane, weather reports, wildlife sightings, but the final pages devolved into frantic scribbles. They're not echoes, they're memories. The wind collects them like leaves in a gutter. The last entry was dated October 31st, written in something dark and sticky that flaked off when I touched it. I can hear my mother calling. She's been dead 17 years. It started with familiar voices, my college roommate, my first girlfriend, people I hadn't thought about in years. They'd whisper snippets of forgotten conversations, inside jokes, arguments, things no recording could have captured. Then came the voices I didn't recognize. Help me find my teeth, a child sobbed one night as the windows rattled. The well is too deep, groaned a man whose accent sounded straight out of the 1800s. I stopped sleeping with the windows open. The local historian showed me the unmarked section of cemetery behind the Baptist church. Storm victims, she said, kicking at a sunken grave. Hollow Creek used to flood bad back in the day. Whole families got swept away in 23, 47, 73. She eyed my ranger station up on the ridge. Funny thing, they always found the bodies upstream. When I asked why, she just pointed to the weather vane. It was spinning again. No wind. The whispers grew bolder. They'd mimic my dead father's voice to lure me onto the porch at night. They replayed my sister's final voicemail, the one she left before her car hit the guardrail, word for word, though I'd deleted it years ago. One sleepless night, I caught them learning. Me, Chell, a new voice experimented, stretching my name like a child sounding out letters. Mr. Ranger? The next night, it had perfected its mimicry. Come outside, Mikey, my mother called from the empty yard. She never called me Mikey. The storm of the century hit on Halloween. Winds hit 90 miles per hour, tearing shingles from the roof. But the real horror came in the lulls, those breathless pauses between gusts when the whispers became a chorus. Every voice I'd ever heard, every voice I'd forgotten, all screaming the same phrase, "We miss you, we miss you, we miss you." Then the windows blew in, not from the wind, from the pressure of countless mouths pressing against the glass from outside. They found the ranger station empty at dawn. The door swung wide open, my boots still lined up neatly by the threshold. The journal lay on the kitchen table, a new entry scrawled in something dark. They weren't calling me home. They were welcoming me back. Down in Hollow Creek, the floodwaters rose unnaturally fast, climbing the banks against all current and logic. Fishermen reported seeing shapes in the torrent, not debris, but figures, their mouths moving in perfect unison with the howling wind. The new ranger arrives next week. I wonder if they'll like the weather vane I left them, the one that spins both ways.